The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine. Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this is Peyton Jones.
And we're wishing you a happy Dependence Day. Because it's not about freedom anymore.
Wow. Right out the gate, getting political.
Had to start the podcast like that. That's how it goes down in Petey's world.
Nice. You know, I was thinking the other day, I would kind of like to end every podcast with a new tagline at the end. We've been doing for 7 years.
What would the tagline be?
I want to pick one from a different movie every single week. I found one from a movie this week.
Rodents of unusual size? I don't think they exist.
I don't know, man. I can't even remember what it was, but it was like reminding you. And I was like, we need to have every
Because
week.
I was inverted. Oh, it's still one of my favorite lines.
What's that from?
Top Gun! Top Gun!
I haven't seen that. You have to understand, I have not seen that since I was 14, but I saw it like 6 times.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, yeah, dude.
That thing's on like every week.
My grandpa took me to see that. And, you know, there was that racy bathroom scene. And
yeah, that's literally my sister like rented that for her birthday. She had all the kids over. That scene came on and my parents turned it off. Like, can you imagine how embarrassing that is?
My grandparents, they were in my extended family. They were the first to come to faith. They were Methodists and they were nominal. And then they went to this Road to Emmaus and they had this, like, if you don't know, the Methodist has something called Chrysalis for teens. And then they have something called Road to Emmaus for, and they're like retreats. And they really encourage Methodists, you know, like to know the gospel. So when you're older and retired, you go to this walk to Emmaus or whatever, and they encountered God. So they're praying for the family. So they have become like switched on Christians, right? And I'm this like little heathen pagan kid, and it never failed. Like whatever, like, and I knew they were religious. And I wasn't saved yet. And I remember I went to visit them because they're on the East Coast. And we're watching Top Gun, and my grandpa's gone during that scene. And I was so surprised he did not get up and take me out. He was the grandpa that when my brother and I went to see Star Wars with him when I was like 3 or 4 years old, the very first scene, he picks that dude up. Darth Vader picks that rebel soldier and snaps his neck. My grandpa goes, "Right, boys, we're going." Right. And my grandpa was a combat infantry officer in World War II and Korea. And like the dude had seen, you know, I mean, I don't even know if I should talk about this. I have a camera that he traded a Luger for. After
it's supposed to be the other way.
Well, that was it. He didn't want it because he had killed the guy. And I guess, you know, it's just one of those things, right? He didn't, and this other guy had this brand new camera and he said, "Hey, the guy goes, "Oh, where'd you get that gun?" Which is kind of obvious. And he's like, "Can I have that?" And my grandpa goes, "I'll trade you your camera for it." So I have the camera. Gun would have been cooler, but I have the camera.
Yeah, but I can understand that. I mean,
but so he had seen plenty of action, but I'll never forget. And out of all the men that have ever walked the planet, he's the man I respect the most. But
wait.
Besides you, of course, Pete.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. I just thought that went without saying.
Well, it doesn't. Let's just get that out of the way. It does not go without saying. We need to say it often and loudly.
So funny. So anyways, we went and saw Top Gun. And, but it never failed with these grandparents. Like even after I became saved, and I was really trying to walk with God, but I'd have like MTV on and David Lee Roth would be on there. Wow, go ahead, jump. And you've seen all, Panama video, whatever, he does some interesting things with the mic stand. Let's just put it that way. Right. That cannot be shared, but it never it wasn't like I was a huge hardcore Van Halen fan. It was just, I was a teenager. I was watching MTV. My Nana would walk through the room every time, whenever. I remember watching Kids in the Hall. Remember that show from Canada?
I never watched it because I don't like Canadians, but that's just the way it is.
And I'm watching this, and I'm a Christian. I'm talking to her about the Lord and the Bible, and I'm watching Kids in the Hall, which is one of the funniest comedy shows ever made. It's Canadian. And there's this one skit. My Nana happens to walk through the room right at the night. It's this guy that sold his soul to the devil so he could become the greatest shoe salesman in the world. So he sits down. You would love this skit. I'll I'll find it and send it to you. But he literally, this guy's like, I only came in here for a pair of socks. I don't know how you're selling me all these shoes. And he's buying like 10, 12 shoes. And then the guy looks at the camera right then. My Nana just happens to be walking through the room, and he goes, "Thank you, Satan." My Nana's like, whoa, never failed with these grandparents. It was like a conspiracy.
So my wife and I, we don't enjoy going up to my folks' house. I mean, I don't know how to say it any other way than
your folks are nice people. So
they're great people.
Tread lightly.
No, they're great people. We don't enjoy, it's not fun.
Yeah.
And a part of the reason why it's not fun, we have two different lifestyles.
Yes.
So my parents have had a 32-inch Zenith TV that was 35 years old. It was my grandfather's TV. That was their TV. It was the only TV in the house. And I mean, we're talking, this is 35 years old. This thing is a couple 100 pounds. And it was in this big wooden box. And they lifted it up somehow, friends, I'm sure, and put it on a dresser. And it was in the family room area. And so, I mean, just my family, we have a TV in every room, including outside. So when we're outside, we can watch TV.
Yeah.
I got a 100-inch TV right behind me.
These TVs.
They're huge, right?
So I thought that was a wall. That's a TV.
So they don't understand before we had kids, they kind of understand now we have kids, but before we had kids, when we would go there and we'd be like, hey, we're going to stay at a hotel. They'd be like, well, we have an extra room. And I'm like, there's no TV. There's no TV anywhere in your house. This is not going to work for us.
That's so funny.
And, I make the joke, this is what keeps me married, right? We have TV and we used to have movies. Now we don't have movies anymore. Happy Dependence Day. And so this one time we're visiting my folks. This is before we had kids. And I don't know what we're watching. We're watching some PG movie, you would never watch a rated R movie in my parents' house. I still don't know how they justified watching The Passion because it's rated R. That was just, you don't do that kind of a thing. In fact, I still remember this one time my sister and I went to go see, you remember the old Sylvester Stallone movie Cliffhanger?
Oh, yes. I love that movie.
We saw it on a Sunday, and after we saw it, my mom goes, "Oh, what's that rated?" And I was like, "Don't tell her," and my sister goes, "Oh, I think it's rated R." And oh my gosh, dude, it was my sister didn't care. It was it's rated R. And so anyway, we're watching some movie, and my dad happens to walk by right as whoever it was, one of the characters is basically saying, you can't sexually harass someone, but he was being very descriptive in what he was saying. And my dad goes off and turn that off. And I'm like, dude, I'm right here in front of my wife. I mean, we're not kids anymore. What the heck? It's just no, we're not gonna go there. We're not gonna watch TV movie. It's not.
He's still your dad, at what stage? That's got to be a hard thing. My mom was pretty good at that.
Was she?
Yeah, she was pretty good at kind of backing up. It was rad. I had this great talk with my daughter this week about because she's 11, right? She's at that age now where the emotions are popping, and temptations are going to start coming in a little bit more, and so we're having these great conversations. And I just shared about how my mom, like stayed out with this girl named Andrea Brown all night, now we did just talk. And Anna and I could talk. That's always been the amazing strength of our conversation, is that woman and I can talk for hours and hours and hours. And
my wife and I, we can watch movies for hours and hours and hours.
Well, it's funny because I literally find her the most fascinating conversationalist ever. And part of it is because she and I can debate, and she's highly philosophical. So we tend to have the same values, but not always the same opinions. And that makes our relationship, I think, very, very interesting. And I grow from talking to her, and I would like to say she grows from me, although I don't know. But it's very rare that I ever hear, "Hey, Peyton, you were right all along." But I often say that. So,
but I never say, "Peyton, honestly, you were right all along." That never comes out of my mouth.
It's a funny thing that I very rarely ever hear that from anyone. But, what was funny is that I was telling Liberty, sorry, I distract myself. I was telling Liberty that, my mom, that was her thing. Is people are like, "Oh, Peyton stays out," because we would stay out all night evangelizing. Like, we would do all kinds of crazy stuff. And every once in a while, we would stay out doing things we shouldn't do, like stalking people and watching where they went late at night. But
are you serious?
I swear, we had this one guy, and if you grew up anywhere in Orange County, like particularly like North County, Orange County, you would have maybe seen this guy. And he had all these necklaces, more than Mr. T. He had all these things around his head with like feathers coming off, and he had probably, no exaggeration, 100 bracelets on each arm. And he would walk around like malls and swap meets and stuff. And you would see him, and he would move really slow, but his arms would be out like this, like he was Frankenstein, because he's holding the weight of all these bracelets. He couldn't put his hand down. So he would go like this. Well, he lived, like, we would see this guy. I worked security at the swap meet in high school. So I can't believe I'm telling this story.
Wow. You worked security? What were you, like $1.25? I mean,
yeah, man. Yeah, we were totally. And when I say,
hey there, mister. Hey, what are you doing?
Yeah. And it was funny. It wasn't like that. It was more like you would hang out by the barriers and say, "Hey, you can't ride your bike in here." It was that kind of security. Right. So anyways, we decide one night, and unfortunately it's my idea. I take credit. I'm like, "Hey," because my buddy goes, "Hey," and we had a nickname. We called him Psycho. I feel bad because later I ended up being a psych nurse. He was obviously mentally ill. And he'd be like, "Hey, Psycho lives right beneath me." And he would sit in his car like forever. We don't know what he was doing. He would sit in his car and rev it up. And we're like, "Does it take him that long to get his arms up?" Whatever. But anyways, I had this bright idea where, my buddy goes, "Well, he leaves like 12:30, 1 a.m. every night." So I was like, "Let's go let's stake him out," right? Stake Out had just come out with Richard Dreyfuss. And I was like, "Let's go stake him out."
I don't know what that movie is. I couldn't see that one.
No, you couldn't. And I never have, actually, but I just remember it was kind of, in our vocabulary at that time.
I've seen it.
I have not seen it. So anyways, so we staked him out. But anyways, the whole point, that undermines exactly what I was getting to, which is where my mom was like, she made the statement to her friends who were like, "Hey, why do you let him stay out so late?" And she said, "I'm not worried. And Peyton's not worried about what I think. He's more worried about what God thinks. So whatever he's up to when he's out all night, I trust him." I think so. We kind of had that conversation about walking with God, and, you answer to a higher authority. And I was kind of telling her that at a certain point here, I've got to start kind of letting go a little bit to let you make your own decisions. I'm still here for guidance. I'm still here. There'll still be rules, but more important than having the rules is for you to understand the reasons why, what kind of things I'm trying to protect you from. So we're going to need to start talking more, and whenever you're like, "Dad, I don't understand that rule. I don't get that. Why is that? I wouldn't have that rule from it." "Well, let's talk about that." Like, that's all open for discussion, just talk to me. Cause like right now she really wants an iPhone, and I'm like, I'm old school. I'm like, "No." So, she's talking to Mom, and I told her, "Hey,
what kind of phone does she have right now?"
She doesn't. Like I said, I'm old school. So, yeah. So, and that's the thing is all the other 12-year-olds are getting phones, the other 11-year-olds have phones, so it's one of those, either you had one a few years ago or you're getting one because you're about to turn 12.
Wow. 12's the new age, huh?
I think that's like the last stop for phones, man. I don't know. And I'm holding out, like, I don't know about that. I jokingly said, I'll get you a ladybug. Because if you ever seen, you know what ladybugs are?
For the seniors?
I go, I'll get you a ladybug. That'll keep you safe. And of course, I was totally teasing her, and she got it. But yeah, so we're having those talks now.
Wow,
it's weird. We were talking to you and me about being old. You were looking through some old pictures of us.
Dude, yeah, I was saying. So my 100-inch TV, it has a screensaver. And, when you leave the Fire TV stick on and you're not watching a show, it goes to the screensaver. And so it shows all these old pictures that I guess it's from my phone. I must have connected the two and don't remember. And so I was seeing some pictures of you. And it was back when you had a dark, whatever you call this, goatee. I mean, you don't really do the goatee because you don't do the mustache part.
Yeah.
But it was like black. It's not so black anymore.
Oh man!
I mean, look at mine. Mine is so white. I think I told you one of my partners. We were about ready to jump on a webinar, and she goes, "Do you dye that thing or do you bleach that thing?" And I'm like, "No, that's natural. I'm old now. That's why I shaved the rest of my goatee off."
And I tell you that this is the weirdest thing, having it all white. It is so weird. And I know.
What does Andrea think? Is she like shave it or keep it?
Well, when I shave my facial hair, my kids cry. So,
why?
I guess it freaks them out. Of course, they're a little older. The last time I did it was a couple of years ago. But, yeah, they're like, Dad, we don't like that. Because they've never seen me without it. I look about 10 years younger when I do. At least
mine went so white, you couldn't even tell that I had a goatee. And so, like, somewhere on my desk, in fact, I think this is it. They did this caricature of when I was speaking at this event, and they didn't even put a goatee because they couldn't see it. It was so white. There's no goatee.
You have a cartoon character of yourself?
Yeah, this was in a newsletter that came out. It's one of my talks that I did.
That is one of the coolest things ever, man.
But that was also, by the way, 100 pounds ago, and now they would they'd have to put a little white right there.
I just feel sorry for the guy they made into the prospector. That dude's all kinds of ugly.
Thank you for saying that was the prospector. Sure. What are you doing for the 4th? I know everyone's going to listen to this after the 4th, except for people on Facebook right now.
Family and friends, man. Yeah. I think we're hanging out with...
we're trying to get someone who has the COVID because we want to spread it. So we're trying to, like, if you've got the COVID, let us know. We want to catch it. We want to be on the spreading team because we figure that's the team that's going to win.
Well, that's the thing is I don't even know what the rules are for getting together right now.
Well, you live in actually a safe county.
Yeah.
Everything here, LA, Orange, San Bernardino, Riverside, all closed up again. Beaches, restaurants, card rooms. My wife goes, "Why did they close the card rooms? Where are the card rooms at?" And I'm like, "They're actually all over the place."
Are they?
Yeah, it's. I go. They're all Indian casinos or something like that. I'm like, it's self-reliance or whatever. It's that whole thing we voted in.
Because you can't tax those. Anything that can be taxed will still be open.
Well, no, restaurants, they close that thing.
Well,
down.
You know what I mean? Like the things that they directly get huge tax, like alcohol. It's worked.
They closed
amazingly.
the bars. They closed the bars.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, maybe
you can't even do takeaway from the bar. There for a while, you could do takeaway.
Oh, really? Can't
you could be like, "Give me a margarita to go," and you could. They made it legal.
The thing is,
it's amazing the freedom we have when there's a pandemic.
Well, and here's the thing. For me, the jury's still out. I don't trust anything I see either way on the internet, pro or con. To me, it seems like still nobody really knows.
No, they do. They do know a lot now. Yeah. They absolutely do. In fact, what's his name? Rand Paul? Not Ron Paul, but his son, the senator. Is it Rand? Is that the one?
Something like that.
Kentucky senator. I know he's from Kentucky.
I like to call him Rond.
Well, he was doing the Senate, whatever, for Fauci. Fauci was there, and he's like, "Why do you keep telling people we can't open schools? We know now. Like, we didn't know 3 months ago, but we know children don't spread it, and they're barely affected by it. And 22 other countries have opened their schools, and they go, look, and he's got all these charts, and he's like, they're not spreading it. And then Fauci, just being a total politician, well, I've been saying from the beginning we got to get our kids back in school right away. And it's like, no, that's not what you've been saying.
Well, that's it. So maybe it's not ignorance. Maybe it's politicization.
Oh, it totally is.
Also,
I can't stand these guys. All of them, both sides.
So much of it, though, different agendas, conspiracy theories. I'm just, my view on all this is we'll see. Give it time. We'll see. It'll come out. So in speaking of we'll see, you did hear that Maxine was apprehended from the Jeffrey Epstein case. By the way, we will get into church planning today, folks. Yes. We're about at our halfway mark, but where we actually talk church planning. But
actually, a mutual friend of ours sent me a great meme and a tagline, and I cut and pasted that and posted it on Facebook, and it's trending quite well right now.
What is it?
It was a picture of Hillary calling the suicide hotline.
That to you.
I didn't want to give away that it was you. I didn't know if you were being all incognito. I cut it out. I was like,
no, because that is a funny meme. Hello, suicide hotline. I'd like to place an order. Well, here's the thing: is that
as I've been saying, Epstein did not kill himself.
That's not even a conspiracy theory.
No,
I mean that is just straightforward corruption.
All the cameras,
nobody touches.
All the cameras get turned off. The guards, I mean, it was just like, yeah, they killed him. They full on killed him.
When I've been on suicide watch. I'm a psych nurse. You don't leave them for 1 second on suicide watch.
Well, you do in prison. Way. You leave them for 15 minutes at a time.
Do you really?
Yeah. They have to check on them every 15 minutes.
That's ridiculous. So people don't have time in 15 minutes to kill themselves?
No, they figure they can come back.
That's not suicide watch. Suicide watch is called a one-on-one.
I don't know if you know this,
24/7.
I don't know if you know this, but prison is actually not a mental facility.
But hello, this is Jeffrey frickin' Epstein.
I know.
Come on.
They wanted him to die. He had too much dirt on too many politicians.
On everybody. Yeah. Yeah, and this is the kind of corruption that just gets left alone. And nobody talks about it. This is one of the reasons that I can't stand the media is for all the pandering and social posturing and virtue signaling that we have things like this that get ignored completely. Where this is a huge deal to me. Sex trafficking is a major, major issue for me.
Yep.
And to just watch this get swept on the carpet. I believe that most of Hollywood, most of the media is involved in it anyways. And that's why we never hear about it from them. Because if this blows open, they're all cooked. All of them are gone almost. I mean, the amount of sexual allegations that come out surrounding newscasters and people that are, pretty high up in Hollywood, there's a reason we don't hear about it.
Yeah.
So
it's unfortunate, but it's true.
Yeah.
So on that happy note,
well, let's talk about the society.
Scott, it's time for this week's topic. Let's get down to the nitty gritty.
Well done, Pete. Well done. Who needs those sound bites anyways? So today, what we're going to talk about is we're continuing our series. I mean, this will be the third.
Don't call it rotation. A series. I can't do it if you call it a series.
I know. Okay, so this is our third rotation around the sun. This is the Church Planning Podcast. Of course, you wouldn't know it if you're new. You've waited to get into the nitty gritty for 30 minutes, which is kind of how we do. about halfway through the show, it becomes time to actually talk about church planning. And we're getting ready today. We started last week talking about what is church planning versus what is church starting. But what we're going to do is we're just going to start over. We hit the reset button. For those of you coming into it, learning to church plant, what we're actually doing is we are going to just kind of chat around how to do it. And your mindset is extremely important. Last week, we talked about church planting versus church starting, because planting is when you actually sow the seeds of the gospel. And if you do what Paul did or what Jesus did, churches will happen. You will found communities. And we forget the fact that Jesus had not just 12 that followed him. He had 72 missionaries. He had a crowd of 500 who were with him post-resurrection. There were different gradations of communities that surrounded Jesus. There was 120 in the upper room. So we forget, because there are 12 apostles, we think that was the community. Jesus had a church, so to speak. There was a community. Some people might take offense to that and say, no way, man, the church started on Pentecost. That's whatever. I mean, the Spirit was poured out on Pentecost, surely. I mean, if that's how you, if that's how you define the church as a Spirit poured out, I got bad news for your Sunday morning, because it probably ain't that. But here's the deal. When we look at it, your mindset is extremely important. And Pete, let's talk through some of these, because those of you that listen, this is where it tends to get like Peyton just go, we have a conversation and Peyton just goes into preaching or lecture mode. And I don't really want to do this. So let me just kind of say where we're going. And Pete, I'd really like to hear some of what you think, because what I want to do is I want to give a little bit of an apologetic for how pre-Christian society is like post-Christian society. Like we think, what they did in Acts, that wouldn't work today, because we live in a different time, different day. And so we need these new methods. Look, the reason that I get so tired of that argument is I feel like people don't understand the society that Paul planted in is not that much different. Other than technology, other than, obviously like things have changed socially to a certain degree. But we can unpack that a little bit too and see, well, maybe there were some of the same social issues they had too. In fact, maybe some of their conditions were worse, and we enjoy greater benefits and freedoms in some ways than they did. But I want to draw the comparisons and contrasts, because if we can do that, if we can establish that, then we can't just negate first century principles. And I care very much. If you read anything that I've ever written, Church Zero, cha-ching, that's our rule, Reaching the Unreached, cha-ching, then you know that first century style Christianity.
Wait, let's keep going. Jump school, cha-ching, jump school, cha-ching, jump school, cha-ching, jump school, cha-ching. And
coming up in 2021,
jump school, cha-ching,
also known as church plantology. So here's the deal. We, as we look at pre-Christian and post-Christian, it's really important to compare these so that that they're the same. If the societies are very much the same, then why wouldn't the same principles work? And so that's what we're going to do. Make sense?
Sure.
Okay.
That's all I have to say on that.
Well, I want to hear some of your take on this, because maybe you won't agree. You might be like, hey, I don't agree with that. And if you're thinking that, then maybe other people are thinking that too. So if a post-Christian world is not so different from a pre-Christian world, then we can say that the ways or the principles we apply to reach each one are not dissimilar. So I'm going to read you a quote first off. This is out of Reaching the Unreached. Cha-ching. This is what I said in that book. Let's briefly examine the intersection of the first and 21st centuries to find common ground. Like society today, the first century in the Roman Empire was a blend of religions and a unified political system that had loosely thrown them all together. Faiths, values, and cultural customs blended due to the trade routes connecting the world, similar to how the internet brings us new goods and information. Among the educated was a deep skepticism of religion, in spite of the social norms of public Roman worship and competing world religions, complete with the ensuing confusion, cynicism, and distrust of religion in general. Philosophy was elevated above religious dogma among the educated, but masked deep primitive superstitions below the surface among the general populace. Despite intellectual ascension over religious beliefs in Western society, the underlying pervasive belief in aliens, fear of ghosts, and acceptance of karma live in contradiction to the claim of science. Thus, the inconsistency of our core beliefs betrays that we still fear what we don't understand, while unconvincingly claiming to understand everything. Superstition remains the underside of our intellectual achievements because our souls intrinsically know that something that rationalism cannot prove and won't be dismissed, the knowledge that we are not alone in the universe. So that's my kind of take on 21st century thought in general, right? It's all these, there's superstition, there's science, there's rational thought, philosophy, religious dogma, all of that competing, and people believing a blend and a mix of all of that.
Okay.
No, you can't do that.
That's all I got, man. You're using big words. You're using 25-cent words. I'm more of a 5-cent word kind of guy.
So, I mean, but what do you think? Would you say it's fair? What would you say about people that, I can't believe in God, but, the next thing that usually comes out of their mouth is they're going to believe in aliens if you press them?
I don't run into that many people who don't believe in God. I run into more people who think they are God.
Yeah.
Or they have a piece of God in them. Everyone's got a piece of God in them. I mean, you don't really run into too many atheists anymore. You see them out there, usually on the internet, usually on YouTube, making fun of anybody who believes in God. But atheism itself takes way more belief than anything, because you basically have to say, all there is to know about everything.
Right.
Because when you admit you don't know everything, then you're admitting outside of what you know, there's a possibility that there's a God.
Yeah.
So the atheist argument doesn't work at all. And that's why I think you don't see that many of them. But there is this huge rise in spiritualism, right? And, I'm really spiritual and that's satisfying to my soul. And, there's that mentality that's out there a lot more than the atheist side. And by the way, there is scientific evidence for aliens. Come on. The government admitted it in April. Hello.
So, and it's really funny too, because even along those lines, I don't get hung up on that with people. When people say, there's aliens, I say, well, that's funny because C.S. Lewis really believed that there's a possibility that there's aliens. It's interesting though, that the amount of, I think it was recently, just this week, they said that if there is aliens, it would probably, the conditions in the universe that they think are out there, it would probably take them 31,000 years to get to us.
Just 31?
Traveling at the speed of light.
Yeah, well.
So I thought, I found that interesting. Just kind of knocked that claim on its head.
No, I've had this talk many times. I mean, Wayne and I used to have this, and he's like, see, there could be aliens. I'm like, dude, I don't have a problem with aliens.
Neither do I.
I have no problem with aliens. Okay, there's aliens.
Right.
That doesn't change anything.
Well, that's it. And they looked at how many planets might, or solar systems might have conditions like ours. And that was what they had determined was, I think it was 31,000. I could be wrong, but it was such a huge amount of time that these beings would have to be timeless and have an absolute huge amount of time on their hands.
I don't believe that any alien would come to our planet. That I don't believe.
You don't think they have a strange fascination with the orifices of farmers?
I'm just saying, I can't see them going, hey, there's this one planet. Woo! Let me tell you, let's go to that one. I don't buy that.
Well, that looks fun. They created this movie there called Star Wars. You have to see it. Boy, were they wrong.
And cliffhanger. Woo!
Cliffhanger. And Top Gun. Well, the way that Maverick flew that plane, gosh.
Because I was inverted.
Because I wasn't, there you go. That's why they're pulling all those tricks over our cities. And here's the thing is I don't disbelieve the possibility of aliens. Don't get me wrong. Like I've always said to people, hey, why not? And C.S. Lewis had that belief. And if you've never read Out of the Silent Planet and the Space Trilogy, the Perelandria series, you are missing out on his richest gems. Because what he does, he imagines all of the planets in the solar system with not all of them, but two of them in particular that have not experienced a fall, that there are beings on these planets. It is absolutely amazing. And of course, it was written before we actually, went to other planets. So, or sent probes or whatever. So what's really interesting,
probes.
This conversation came full circle, didn't it? Welcome to the Church Planner Podcast. If you are offended by this podcast, that's because you're a pastor. And
if you have not gotten offended yet, we're trying hard. Give us some time.
We're actually pretty tame today, right? But anyway, so going to just compare some of these here. In a pre-Christian, I mentioned that you have the competing religions due to open trade routes. In a post-Christian, you have competing religions due to globalism. So each of these, like the whole idea that everything's relative, right? The postmodern mindset. If you study the history of postmodernism, it came with cultural studies. When Napoleon Chagnon and some of these other guys, they go down to South America and study people's. It particularly in the 60s really gained popularity because they were studying frameworks for belief, like epistemology, like how do you know what you know? And they started crafting that you are a product of everything, which to a certain degree true. You are a product of your upbringing. And so therefore they began to suspect that maybe the way I frame and think about things is not correct because I was brought into life with this framework, this paradigm. And so when you find people from different religions coming across each other, there's always that, what if I was raised in that culture? Would I have believed differently? But, Paul has an argument. I mean, you can tell when the loud ones are coming. You just stop. You just pause. But in Acts 17, when Paul's on Mars Hill, he answers that. Like, this is not something new to him. So you go back, Romans 1 and 2, you go back and you go, okay, I'm going to read what Paul has to say. This was the world he lived in. So the world that we're living in, competing religions due to globalism, and, everybody's saying, well, I don't know what to believe. That was the world that Paul was ministering to, right? There was Judaism. There was, religions from the East. There was, the paganism, the barbarians that he talks about are Celtic barbarians. There were all these different, plethora of gods that were competing. They had watched the Greek gods become the Roman gods. They got morphed. So they knew this. So then you've got philosophy elevated above religious dogma. That was, if you read Socrates and Plato and them, they actually took on religious belief and punked it. And so philosophy, and that was, again, going back to Mars Hill in Athens, where they're punking, they're elevating themselves above religious dogma. That's what happened back then. Well, now philosophy is kind of in the back seat because philosophy got to a point where it undermined everything, including itself, right? Like if you talk to a philosopher, they'll be like, well, you can't really know anything for sure. Because every argument can be dismantled. Almost everything that you postulate in the human language, it can be taken apart by logic and critical thinking. You can, well, what do you really mean by that? If you ever read Socrates, that's what he's doing. He's just picking everything apart. So philosophy is kind of, well, that's not helpful. If all it does is, pick everything apart, then that's hard for us to even know what to do with it. It just seems like an intellectual exercise in. I can't complete that sentence because it's inappropriate. But it's I'm thinking of a different way to frame what I was about to say. But anyways, what we've replaced philosophy with, therefore, is science. Science is now the new religion that has been elevated over and above religious dogma. And people find their meaning and their purpose there, but only selectively. Right. For example, in the way that philosophy was seen as a buffer and a protection, it's almost like a defense against religion. That's what it was back then. That's why Paul takes on the philosophers at Mars Hill. Now it's science, where we don't really follow it. Like, for example, the whole thing right now about treating everyone fairly and Black Lives Matter, which I fully support. Don't get me wrong. And don't start with do you support the movement or this or that? I go back to George Floyd. Black Lives Matter, right? Here's the deal. Science, if we really believe Darwinism, we would say, hey, look, those in power deserve power, right? Because it's survival of the fittest, baby. And I'm sorry that hurts your feelings. I'm sorry you don't like it. And by the way, disclaimer, this isn't what I believe. But Darwinism would teach you that when any group of people comes to the top, they are accelerating, they are evolving, and they will dominate. All others will die off. And that's horrific. We forget the fact that in the Victorian period, that was used. Darwinism was used for dominating through colonialism, other people. People always think it's religion. Well, remember that in the 1800s, at the height of the British Empire, the very height of it, Darwinism was really coming into acceptance. And they believed that, and they actually said, and you can go back and find this, where they believed that white people were more highly evolved than Black people, which is horrific to even, ponder. Now, since then, you would look at it and say, well, maybe the science does not prove that. But we got to remember that's the roots of it. But if you take actually what Darwinism is, and you make the world devoid of any religious philosophy, there is no morality. It is only survival. And if it's only survival, then survival becomes the highest virtue, not moral behavior. There is no grounds for moral behavior except the fact that you tell me that you think it's right. Once you take religion out, and I don't know what your take is on that, Pete. There are people who say, oh, no, we have to treat it. And you just keep picking it apart. Why? Why do we? I mean, evolution teaches us that strong survive and the weak die off. Why wouldn't I apply that to my personal life? If that's how the universe works, why can't that be my morality?
Yeah, no, I understand what your point is. And I think that's part of the reason why you see so many apologists. And this is coming from, I was on the board of directors for apologetics.com for, 10 years, 12 years, whatever it was. And they would constantly meet with and do debates with atheists, because that's one of the questions that has to be answered is, where does morality come from if there's no God? Because if there's no God, then where is your morality coming from? Just because you believe this, but that's just based on your belief. And it's interesting to see them struggle with it and try to present, no, I don't need a God in order to be moral.
Right.
And but it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense.
Hitler literally said, an exact quote, because nature is cruel, we also can be cruel. So Hitler literally took his cue from nature, from his belief in evolution. And that was he was consistent, if nothing else. So this is where I think, we do need to push back and challenge that you have no basis. And if you're going to be consistent with your worldview, and then people say, well, I believe as a human race, we will evolve higher. And you say, well, that you made that up. right? Like you literally made that up. And some people would say, well, the more sophisticated society, but that doesn't prove that we should still treat one another fairly, right? This is where the people that are trying to cull the population of the world go, is they say, well, those of us that are rich and have the money, we were the smart ones. We're better survivors. Our gene pool needs to be the one that goes into the future. Therefore, we will cull the weak and we will cull the poor. And, I think no matter where you try to go with it, you're going to find that you eventually end up in a dead end, because there are problems that can't be solved by the solutions that people are trying to come up with from an evolutionary framework without going to a very horrible place.
Right.
Whereas the gospel comes in and says, hey, look, here's the answer, right? Love one another. There's a God, yada, yada. So let's move on, because we're running out of time. Superstitious belief in ghosts, devils, and curses. I didn't mean to dismantle every one of these. And guys, I'm sorry. I know that's a horrific, I feel like Ra's al Ghul from Batman even bringing this stuff. It's terrible. I don't advocate any of this. But it is truly horrific. Once you strip God out of the universe, you're in a very bad place. Superstitious belief in ghosts, devils, and curses. I love the fact that repeatedly the Gospels, that the disciples kept thinking they saw the boogeyman. They saw, you and I used to joke about it, they believe in the boogeyman. Like the first time I realized that in the scripture, like where they keep thinking they see a ghost. Jesus walks on the water. They think they see a ghost. Jesus appears to them after the resurrection. They think they see a ghost. Peter comes to the door. They think they've seen his ghost. After he's supposedly executed. I love the fact that these guys believe in ghosts. It cracks me up, right? Because I was always taught as a young, there's no such thing in ghosts. Well, the disciples thought there were. And, whether you go, that's before they understood.
But
maybe,
you got to look
not.
at, they also knew the Old Testament.
Yeah.
I mean, remember when wasn't it Saul who conjured up Samuel?
Yeah.
And he literally conjures him up because Samuel's like, hey, who brought me here?
Yeah.
So, in that context, it's like, okay, well, what are you doing, man?
Gosh dang it.
What are you doing? What's up?
I wanted to read Albert Griffin's comment, and I clicked on it, and I turned my volume down, and it still gave me song. I want to interact with our audience a little bit on this, see what they're saying.
Well, you can't.
I can't.
You need to learn how to multitask your Facebook Live properly.
I guess I do. Shoot. Well, we all know I'm the genius of technology, don't we?
Yeah, but anyway, that was the end of my point.
I was still listening.
They conjured up Samuel. That's it.
Yeah, they did, and that's a whole nother can of worms. That's a fun conversation, especially between me and you. That's a really fun conversation.
I'm just saying, it makes sense why they would have this. Yeah, ghosts are real.
It happened. Yeah, it was. And to me personally, I've always kind of been open, again, like aliens. Like, I don't think they're all demons. I think some of them are. But I actually believe that people might get stuck. Nothing's working the way it should. Birth defects. I mean, we live in a broken world. Why would we think that the path after people die, when hell was not created for us anyways, it was created for the devil and his angels? Why would we think that people wouldn't get stuck somewhere? Because in the final day, the earth gives up all its dead, and then everybody goes to the judgment. Nobody has gone to the judgment yet. So when it says appointed for man to die and then comes judgment, that's at the end of the age. So could people be stuck until then? Could there be spirits in prison? Well, there are. Right? Abraham's bosom, all that was where the righteous were. But I mean, nobody's in the lake of fire yet. That happens at the very end when people stand before God and get judged. So, but today we have a belief, even if you claim that you're totally scientific and this and that, you might still believe in ghosts, devils, aliens. So we've got this inconsistent kind of thing going on, where there's a superstition. And I'm not even saying that when I say superstitious, please don't say that I'm saying it's false. When I say superstitious belief, I mean literally that a superstition is something that you believe, but you have no basis for. You don't know why you believe it. It's like a primitive belief. It's just there. There's no factual support proving or disproving it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So they also believed in moral retribution. All religions believe that. Today, most people walk around, like you were saying, Pete, to the people I meet that are atheists tend to be younger people, but most people like middle-aged or older, even if they don't believe in the Bible, they believe in cosmic justice, some form of, what goes around comes around, or some form of karma. So today, just like they believe back then, the gods are watching. There was a sense of justice hardwired in the universe that they didn't understand. Today, people would call it karma. I think that has come over from Eastern religions. There's also the belief that we're not alone in the universe. Back then, there's a belief that we're not alone in the universe today, whether it's aliens or whatever. There was the absence of exclusivism in religion. They were all pagans. Judaism was the one religion that believed there was one God. Now, there's an argument to be made that the Jews believed there was one God, but they also were like, but there's other things too, and we don't know what those are, right? And Paul in Corinthians comes and says they are not other gods; they are in fact demons. And it wasn't that clear in the Old Testament.
Where does he say that?
He says it in Corinthians.
Which one? 2 Corinthians or?
Let me.
Did you not see the humor? Did you not see the joke? 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians. That's what Trump called it. Oh, God.
Oh well, okay, but look, I lived in Britain. You know why I didn't even catch that?
Is that what they say over there?
That's a British way of saying.
Oh no,
2
kidding.
Corinthians. Yeah, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians. You don't say second, you say 2.
Oh,
so
that's funny.
When you said it, 12 years of my life being in Britain.
No, that's funny. I did not know that. I was actually having a conversation with a guy yesterday, and we were talking about Trump, and I'm like, oh yeah, he's a Christian because that's what he needed to say to win the election.
He's a Christian, like I'm a fashion model. I think I'm good looking.
He's like, yeah, 2 Corinthians. Come on.
So on the Ministry Ninja podcast, and I wouldn't mind getting him on here. My nephew's a guy named Tadis, and he got Teacher of the Year in California. I've mentioned him before. I think you've met him, but he's going to come on Ministry Ninja podcast tomorrow. And oh my gosh, dude, he said the funniest stinking thing about, he was trying to draw a comparison between Obama to the black community and Trump to the black community. And his statement about Trump was the funniest thing, where he goes, I can't remember what he said about Obama. It was pretty funny too. Because both of them, from his perspective, he's like, yeah, neither one of us, like neither president was the black community completely happy with. But he went on to say, but he said, Obama gave us hope. But he goes, but Trump, he goes, it's kind of like when you have a stepdad and your stepdad loves you because he wants to get with your mama. So he's nice to you because he has to be. But he doesn't love you. So I thought that was really funny.
Man, that is funny.
The way he put it, and I got to tell you, I can't.
That
wait
is
to have,
Trump to Christians.
Exactly.
He's a stepdaddy because he wants to get with your mama.
He doesn't really love you, but he wants to be with your mama. So but here's the awesome thing is, I can't wait to have him. The way Tadis's perspectives on things, that guy has taught me so much. He's my nephew, but he is a man I greatly respect. And he was like, hey, I don't want to get you in trouble, so I just want to talk. I'm like, Tadis, look, if you know anything about my podcast, you know that Pete and I don't even try, right? Like, he's not coming on this one, but I'm like, look, let me tell you my philosophy.
Why didn't you have him come on this one?
I will. Yeah, it would be fantastic.
Did he write a book?
Because
I'm not going to read it.
David on here. I'd also love to get A. David. I had a great talk with A. David this week. I'd love to get him on here as well. But my philosophy is, I'm not out to win a popularity contest. I'm out to help church planners. And if I make people mad along the way, that's what I do in my everyday life. Like, why wouldn't I why I'm not here to get popular. Like I would have picked a different, I'd be working out and getting a tan and taking a mega church. I've had one of those before. Like I would go do all those things. And then I would have something on leadership. That's when you want a big audience. That's the stuff you do.
7 secrets to being an effective leader.
I'm telling you, like, you don't do this, So,
and we're going to take it all from the Song of Solomon.
Hey, I know we're approaching an hour. So Song of Solomon podcast, boy, wouldn't that have an explicit warning on it? I just,
her hair
by the
is
way,
like a beautiful goat.
hey, slow down. Slow down. We don't want to have to mark this podcast explicit. So stop with the old biblical the Casanova talk. But what's really funny, man, is I've been doing Through the Word with for Chris Langham, and I just did. I lost my train of thought.
What'd you do? Which book did you do?
Well, I'm doing Second Chronicles right now.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you going to do the whole Bible for that?
I am. And dude, so far on Through the Word, I had a guy message me. He's like, dude, I was in Luke. And I'm like, I don't remember doing any Luke, but apparently I did some of Luke. They must have asked me to take a chapter or two or something. But so far, I've done Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, which those 3 books go in a row. And I told him, hey, whoever does Judges really ought to do 1st, 2nd Samuel, but someone else really wanted to do it. So they did it. Then I keep telling them, you guys give me all the books no one wants to do, like Leviticus, Deuteronomy. But 1st, 2nd Kings, nobody wanted that one.
Really?
And after that, I'm doing 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Now, let me tell you, if you've done 1st and 2nd Kings, and then you have to go back and do 1st and 2nd Chronicles, holy cow. That is tough.
Who's doing Song of Solomon? Come on. Who's doing it?
I would love to do song. But this is the thing. See, I love all the books that nobody else likes because those are the ones that always bothered me if I didn't understand them. And I would study the crud out of those back when I was in pastoral ministry. And I would fall in love with these books, man. Like once you understand them and they break open, you're like, whoa, then you geek out and you want to talk to everybody about them, like Ecclesiastes. The day the code cracked for me on Ecclesiastes was like everybody, it started with my seminary professor. He's like, hey, you're all wrong on this. Let me tell you the Hebrew word to use this for vanity. That's the key to the book. That'll change the whole thing. You'll understand it totally differently. Incontrovertible. You cannot argue against it. Once you understand what, like from a Jewish perspective, what that book is, it changes it all and it makes it so much better. Holy crap. Yeah. But anyways, I don't remember why I was going there. There was something funny and it had to do with that, but I can't remember what it was. So, but Chris did send me a bunch of funny clips that every month his kids go through and they edit. And I try to do all the editing for them. So all I do is smack a bumper on the front and back. But, he sent me clips. I forget what I say on there. I say some really funny stuff. And he goes, these are my 3 favorite from this month. And it's some pretty funny stuff. I'm surprised he lets me work for him. So anyways, the absence of exclusivism in religion in the 1st century compared with relativism, or pick what works for you today. And then the last one is the emperor was a god. That was the world that they stepped into, that the emperor was truly a god, that there was a man on earth that was given godlike power and authority. And of course, Pete, I know where your brain is going on this one. In our society, we give our rulers godlike powers, which is not new to the Bible. In the Psalms where he says, have I not said you are gods? The men, judges, that's what that means. That whole ability to govern others is put in God's place. And we are, we're told in the book of 1st and 2nd Kings and Samuel that when God is like, hey, look, why don't you have me rule over it? Like, you're not really supposed to have other people ruling over you. That's not really how humanity was designed. Well, that's what we do, is we put the state in the place of God. And the state rules over even the church. And so when we think, oh, well, a lot of the problems that have come out recently in society, where the church is going, whoa, 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 who do we obey? Do we obey God or do we obey Caesar? This was nothing new. when you have a godlike emperor and you have a state that no longer believes in God and puts itself in the place as the ultimate authority, now you're not talking apples and oranges. You're talking two different types of apples, Fuji or Washington. So,
Or Gala.
Yeah. I don't eat those, but
or Granny.
I do eat those with a
Do
bit
you?
of caramel. Yeah. Oh yeah. You put some caramel on them at Disneyland, I'm good. But hey, that's it. I mean,
carnivore diet. That ain't on the diet.
You know, and really, I want to hear about that. I'm surprised we can get to that.
I can't wait for 2 more weeks when I get to do an episode. It's not going to be on this podcast. Let me just put it like that. It is not going. That stuff I was talking to you about, that's not going on this podcast. That's going on the From Concealment podcast. In fact, I even told Dan, we're not going to do it as a Facebook Live. I'm giving you full authority at the end to go, we can't air that. So
I want to hear it. I want to hear it. So anyways, you know, hopefully for those of you, I mean, if nothing else, even what you heard today, that is the backbone of an apologetic approach right there. I mean, just even understanding our culture and understanding our society, being able to turn that around. And it to me, just when you analyze our culture, you really see the need for the gospel in it and why we do what we do. So hope that's helpful, you know, but we haven't even gotten to the first century principles that speak into this. But Paul had an approach, and guys, all this was to say, Paul's approach, because of the society he ministered in, will work today because of the society that we minister in. They are not dissimilar. And therefore, our approach to church planning should not. So when you read Acts, when you read the epistles, you should be looking very closely at what Paul did and how he approached a culture like that, because it will have the same effect. So that was it, man.
As you wish. Sorry, I was doing a movie line to close out the episode.
Did you see that Babylon Bee post that said, "A merciful God determines the world will end before the Princess Bride remake gets finished"?
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Thank you, Babylon Bee. Thank you.
So let me ask you a quick question here. You know, as you're getting ready to do all this church planning stuff and reach the culture, who's going to help you out with all that financial stuff that you need help with? IRS compliance, W-2s, firing your employees, rehiring them back up, furloughing, all that. Who helps?
You know, Josh Henry, and the thing I can say, Josh Henry runs Simplified Church, which has a superstitious belief in ghost devils, aliens, and curses. But on top of that, they employ those ghost devils and aliens to do all of your bookkeeping, your finances, your anything that you need. You know, there's kind of like a digital justice or even a type of financial karma involved in that, Pete, where they understand how the universe works. And rather than being relativistic, they actually pick what works for you. And they do not believe that the emperor God is the bank or the government. So what they do, Pete, is they work for your church. They work for you. And they do all of your bookkeeping needs and all of your tax compliancy. And they ensure that you are able to focus on all those other societal issues and reach it with the gospel, Pete. That's simplifiedchurch.com.
Wait. What was the name of it?
SimplifiedChurch.com.
Okay. SimplifiedChurch.com. Thank you.
All right. Well, guys, this has been Peyton and Pete. And I wish for the love of Pete, I could have remembered the movie quote that I was going to hit you with today. But I'll start working hard on that every week. I'll start getting some movie quotes together so that rather than leaving you with our tagline, because we're approaching 400 episodes. What is today? Is it like 398?
398, I think.
Yeah. So we're approaching the point at which we can start shifting. I would say episode 400. I don't know.
All bets are off.
Hey, man, I still think we need to do a live Zoom call where
I think you should
here.
do it. I think you should do it. Absolutely.
I'll do it. I'll host
join.
it and I'll record it. We can't live stream it though, can we?
Why not?
Can we do like a Facebook Live where people?
You can still live stream it.
I don't know how to do that, but I can do.
Have 100 people on.
Yeah. All right. Cool.
You can have 1,000 people on and live stream it on Facebook.
You can. Because I would love to interact with all 1,000. Can I get an amen?
I would love it if we had 1,000 listeners. That would be really cool.
We do have 1,000 listeners. What are you talking about?
We don't have 1,000 listeners. We don't get 1,000 downloads per episode. It takes us like 6 months to get 1,000 downloads an episode.
Oh, what's up with that?
I don't know. They might not like the smack.
Yeah, I think it's you, Pete.
I'm sure it's me.
But they don't give me until the second half. So it's like, it's all you up front.
Yeah.
Man, we got to flip that around. Just teasing. I've been in ministry long enough to know people definitely do not like me. So I think we're in good company, brother. All right. Well, hey, thanks for listening to us today, guys. We appreciate it. Apparently, you are part of a select few. Trust me. And hey, this has been Peyton and Pete reminding you, if you want to reach the ones nobody's reaching, you need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planter Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planter Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplanterpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplantermagazine.com.